Hey, it's Mike, and I'm a Jeep TJ owner. I'm an EV owner, so I'm excited about this vehicle. Let's take a walk through, and my goal is to convince you to buy one. No, that's not really what it is. But my goal is kind of to explain some of the pros and cons of the design decisions that they had to make it this off-road open air, but then also to talk about why $65,000, well, $67,000 after transportation, is a reasonable cost for this, and might I even say a bargain? Let's talk about some of the basics of this. And from a dimension standpoint, it is actually longer than the Jeep Wrangler, so the four-door Jeep Wrangler. 5 inches longer, but 6 inches shorter in wheelbase. And the reason for that is, on the Wrangler, they want to push the wheels so far to the front and the rear to give that departure and approach angle. And so that kind of skews things. Usually battery EVs have a very long wheelbase because they want to fit a big battery under there. But actually in this case, not so much. Ground clearance is 9.1 inches, which seems actually very reasonable. And this is trail rated. But one of the things to point out, there are other EVs out there that have larger ground clearance. The Hummer, for example, has an air suspension, so it lifts up and down, and it has up to 15.9 inches. So much better ground clearance, but that vehicle is kind of a beast. And on the Wrangler, you can get varying, depending on the wheel and packages, you can get 9.7 to 12.9 inches of off-road clearance. From a styling standpoint, this vehicle I just think is fantastic. So it has the 7-slot grille. You can see a camera with a washer here for an off-road front view when you're going through trails. But rather than the Wrangler, which has, I do this with emojis and social media, it's like a capital O, capital I, you do 7 of them and an O. This one you can kind of do a U and then 7 dashes and then another U. I think it's very clever. I actually love the look of this. And this is the Moab edition, the launch edition. It has recovery tow hooks, front fog lights. There is, it's more, dare I say, aerodynamic than the Wrangler. You can see they're trying to make some attempts to manage the air flowing under this vehicle. Tires are 33-inch next-gen Rhodian tires, and they do have an aggressive off-road tread. Now, Wranglers are going to come probably with at least 35s, maybe 37s if you're really daring, and something like a BF Goodrich. But those certainly are not all-season tires. They're more aggressive than that. And as you can obviously see, all 4 doors can be removed. Now, there's some design considerations to take into account when you have removable doors. And I'm going to show those on the vehicle on the floor that has the doors still on it. So this has the available Sky one-touch foldable roof system. So it's a soft top that closes up. And the interior on this, though, even though the Wrangler has gotten better year after year, this is going to take it to a next level. And it is more of a occasional off-road use vehicle and not something you're going to climb rocks with, because it doesn't have like a solid axle in front or anything like that. The display here is a 14.5-inch Uconnect 5 system. And if you remember the Jeep Wagoneer S, the Swagoneer, that has a smaller display here and then a second display down the bottom, as well as a digital cluster. So this, I really like it. They talked about in the media materials about the work they did to make sure that this is still readable in bright sunlight. That's always been a concern for hardcore off-roaders, that if you remove the top, you got sun glare coming in, how are you going to see the displays? So that's why they like, analog gauges. 12.3-inch digital cluster. It's got the Selec-Terrain system. So down here for rock, sand, snow, and sport. Put it in sport mode. It goes 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds. That's how fast this thing is. And now let's talk about true off-roading, hardcore off-roading. This does have an electric rear locker. So not a lot of EV off-roaders have a mechanical locking system. I meant to look that up, but most of them do an electronic locking system, and they do this on the rear, that plus that 15-to-1 gear reduction. They say this gives this vehicle some tremendous off-road capabilities. So personally, I'm just gonna say this, my vehicle has the rotary shifter. They work fine, they're intuitive, people get in, they know how to use it. I would have rather have seen stalks or something else, and that way it would make room for a third cup holder. Other things to consider when you do removable doors, you need to have locking storage. That's why that's there, because when you have the doors off like this, you can't keep people from stealing your stuff. Another locking over there. And overall, the interior of the materials they do have this kind of, all-weather type feel to it. Very premium materials, but it doesn't feel like something that's gonna shrink up and dissolve if it gets wet. You can see because of those removable doors, speakers are in the front and elsewhere throughout the vehicle so that when you take the doors off, you still get sound. Let's get down to the EV specs of this. So I mentioned before that these tires are very off-road in nature, kind of meaty. The Wagoneer S, which is also a Stella Large platform, has the same 105 kilowatt hour battery, or 100.5 kilowatt hour battery, excuse me, which on this model is protected by skid plates. I did kind of stick my head underneath to verify that. You're welcome. But anyway, given the blocky front end, the meaty off-road tires, I don't know if you saw, there's some internet meme that just kept going around showing the aerodynamics of a cow versus a Jeep. I don't know where that came from, whether it's true or not, but somehow they concluded that, yeah, boxy vehicles like this are less aerodynamic than a cow. But you're not gonna go 100 miles an hour in a cow, right? Let's hope not. For this model, for the Moab, EPA estimated range is 230 miles. With their next model that they didn't fully identify, but I got some information on that, it's gonna have a 250 mile range. You can expect more of all-season tires on that versus these more aggressive off-road tires, and that's gonna help with the range a little bit. As far as the aero, they did as good as they can without making it look like a jelly bean, and I appreciate that. So that next model will be called the Overland model, and for that we need to talk about CCS1. You might be disappointed, but the other Stellantis Stella Large platform vehicles in North America have CCS, and they just announced that they have signed the agreement with Tesla, so that will, first step would be to make adapters available for existing vehicles as well as this one so that it can use the Tesla supercharger network. It claims a 5 to 80% charging speed of 28 minutes. 5 to 80 is kind of an odd number, but the Wagoneer S, similar number, although they stated it differently. Again, it's always frustrating when they change the yardstick of how things are measured. But you should probably expect peak charging of 150 pretty consistently for a while, maybe going up to like 175, but that's about it. In the rear, there is some additional storage in the back, as well as a 3 cubic feet in the front trunk. This, and oh, that other thing back there, by the way, that's a subwoofer. One of the disadvantages of removable doors, it makes it difficult to have a good audio system. And so you need a big subwoofer to move air. Putting speakers in the doors, there's a lot of air in the door, so that makes a great bass box for them, so you get a lot of good sound performance. But in something like this, because you remove the doors, you gotta put the speakers in a fixed location where they don't get taken out. Places like that. So anyway, to take the rear window out, you flip over these cam locks. And as I mentioned before, this is really clever, I thought. The rear window has the heated elements in it, so it's just a magnetic connector for that simple electrical connection. And then on the inside, you also have the cam locks. Now, there is a separate cable for the rear windshield wiper that's covered by that cable because you don't remove the rear door. One of the things I have not come across, I did ask the product specialist, so I tried, I've not seen any 120 volt outlets in this vehicle. I've seen accessory outlets, 12 volts, the little cigarette lighters, and no mention of vehicle to load. Forget about vehicle to home. I just want to be able to like power, I don't know, an electric griddle off of this thing. So that would be interesting. No mention of that, but maybe that is something that comes at a later date. And let's talk about the design considerations for removable doors. So you need to have hinges. So these hinges don't require a tool, but what it does require, and you may think, oh man, it's broken. It's not broken. So this is the disconnect for the doors, because you have power locks and windows, and you have power windows, and it's a framed door. So unlike the Bronco, which has half doors as standard, this has a fully framed door. And to allow the convenience of being able to have these modern things like power adjustable mirrors and things like that, you have to disconnect this one cable in order to take the doors off. But they're told, they say that it's something that can be done easily and without tools. But like I said, modern conveniences, it does have side cameras there. This is gonna also offer SAE level 2 driver assistance. But again, when you take the doors off, you have to accommodate, there's a Mopar kit that they talk about. It's on their website that they'll offer. So you can take the mirror off and put a temporary mirror in place. I have the same thing on my Jeep TJ, but it's just things I bought online that vibrate down the road, but at least it gives you a little bit of sense of who's behind you. So anyway, my overall judgment on this vehicle. I actually think the $65,000, $67,000 is, you're gonna laugh, I think it's a reasonable price for this vehicle, for this launch edition Moab. Given what you get for this battery electric vehicle, I think there'll be reasonable demand initially, more so than the Wagoneer S. And it does have that off-road vibe to it, with or without the doors on. So I think it's gonna sell well. They have no problem apparently selling the $100,000 Wrangler 392. That's what this one is. And the Recon has more power, faster acceleration, and it's not as capable off-road, but it still seems like a really fun vehicle. So I'm optimistic about it. What do you say?